Hi everyone, and welcome to A Story of Light, a live stream musical journey in 19 days. Today is day 4, and if this is your first time watching, you're very welcome. My name is Luke Slott. I'm a musician in Dublin, and I mainly focus on setting to music the Baha'i sacred writings. And for the first 19 days of March, I'm doing this series of daily live streams in preparation for the release of my new album, Home of Light, which is coming out a little bit later in the year, and which is a collection of new songs based on the writings of Abdul-Baha. And if you're not familiar with Abdul-Baha, he was the son of Bahá'u'lláh, the founder of the Baha'i faith, and he's really cherished as a role model to Baha'is and friends around the world. And 2021 marks the centenary of his passing, so it's a very special year, hence the new album in his honor. So feel free to check out the previous episodes. We've been live streaming here from AP Studios Dublin over the past few days, and the previous episodes are linked below. And so, all the live streams are posted on YouTube, so you can watch them in your own time at any point. So today is the fourth day of the annual Baha'i fast, a very special time of year. And this is the 4th episode of our Story of Light. So thank you so much for watching and for joining me on this big adventure. And so yesterday we had reached this point of great tragedy in the story. The Bab, this young genius of unfathomable brilliance who had vitalized his country through the sheer creative power of his pen, had been publicly executed on the orders of the king of Persia. His followers, known as the Babis, had been mercilessly mowed down by the authorities, and really, to all outward appearances, it seemed as if the message of the Bab was a lost cause. But the Bab had breathed his last in a state of seemingly untouchable confidence in the conviction that he had fulfilled his intended purpose. For 6 years, he had repeatedly told his followers that everything he was doing, every word he spoke, every letter he wrote, every line and dot of his books and writings had one central purpose, and that purpose was to prepare the way for the coming of the great promised one awaited by all of the world's religions, the one who would appear in the future and would guide humanity into its golden age of universal peace and prosperity, and who he referred to simply as him whom God will make manifest. And the Bab had infused that same confidence into his followers as well. Many of the Babis had really become so heroic that they had willingly chosen to sacrifice their lives rather than give up their faith in the Bab. And today I wanted to share with you a quotation from the Baha'i writings that describes the heroism of the Babis. So Antimo, could you just put up the first slide, please? The whole world marvelled at the manner of their sacrifice. The mind is bewildered at their deeds, and the soul marvelleth at their fortitude and bodily endurance. Hath any age witnessed such momentous happenings? Methinks patience was revealed only by virtue of their fortitude, and faithfulness itself was begotten only by their deeds. So all of the great champions of the Bab, all of his chief disciples who had carried his message like an Olympic torch across the length and breadth of Persia, had been put to death along with the Bab himself. But among those Babis that remained, there was one who had shown himself to be the most outstanding and capable of them all. And he was a young Persian nobleman whose name was Bahá'u'lláh, a name which in Arabic means the glory of God. But in connection with the name of our story, some Arabic-speaking friends recently told me that this name Bahá'u'lláh can also be translated as light of God, hence a story of light. And this young nobleman, because he came from a noble family, from the elite aristocratic classes of Persia, his father was a minister in the court of the king. For this reason, he was not killed, but he was arrested and he was chained up and thrown into what was one of the most notorious prisons of the time, a place called the Black Pit of Tehran. And this place wasn't really a prison at all. It was an old underground, disused water tank where the worst of the worst criminals were sent to be locked up and cut off from society. This was a place with no light, with no heat. It was a pitch black, filthy, stench-filled dungeon. And so Bahá'u'lláh was separated from his wife and children and was locked up in this black pit. And this was really with the intention that he would waste away and just be forgotten. And I mentioned a few episodes back that throughout our story, I'm going to a particular book called God Passes by Shoghi Effendi as a kind of a guide through the story. And so I wanted to share with you a passage in which Shoghi Effendi describes the imprisonment of Bahá'u'lláh as a critical turning point in the story. So Antimo, if you can just put up the next slide, please. So Shoghi Effendi tells us, at a time when the cause of the Bab seemed to be hovering on the brink of extinction, when the hopes and ambitions which animated it had, to all human seeming, been frustrated, when the colossal sacrifices of its unnumbered lovers appeared to have been made in vain, the divine promise enshrined within it was about to be suddenly redeemed. In this most dark and dreadful hour, a new light was about to break in glory on Persia's sombre horizon. And down there, in this black pit, 4 stories underneath the earth, where he lay with his feet in stocks and his neck in chains, Baha'u'lláh experienced something, a kind of a mystical experience that he later described in his own words. So Antimo, can you put up the next slide, please? He said, during the days I lay in the prison of Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipitated itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. Every limb of my body would, as a result, be set afire. And this mysterious torrent flowed through him with more and more intensity until eventually it could no longer stay inside him. And there in the darkness of the black pit, that same creative power that had been so astonishing in the writings of the Bab now began pouring out of Baha'u'lláh, and it was like the bursting of a dam. These poetic verses started flowing out from his tongue with such intensity that he said that no man could bear to hear them. And as he lay there, weighed down by the chains, these verses gushed from his tongue, verse after verse, each one more beautiful than the last, building up like the climax of a great symphony, until suddenly Baha'u'lláh felt as if the very darkness around him was split open, and he saw a vision so dazzling and so bright and so beautiful that it nearly blinded him. And in that vision, he saw the figure of a woman, a maiden, suspended in the light and calling out to him. So you can put the next slide on. He tells us, while engulfed in tribulations, I heard a most wondrous, a most sweet voice calling above my head. Turning my face, I beheld a maiden, the embodiment of the remembrance of the name of my Lord, suspended in the air before me. So rejoiced was she in her very soul, that her countenance shone with the ornament of the good pleasure of God, and her cheeks glowed with the brightness of the All-Merciful. She was imparting to both my inward and outer being tidings which rejoiced my soul. Pointing with her finger unto my head, she addressed all who are in heaven and all who are on earth, saying, By God, this is the best beloved of the worlds, and yet ye comprehend not. This is the beauty of God amongst you, and the power of his sovereignty within you, could ye but understand. And the maiden turned to Bahá'u'lláh, and she told him that the time was soon coming for him to reveal to the world that he was, and always had been, the one promised by the Bab. He was him whom God will make manifest. And she told him not to be afraid, and promised him that she would inspire him with the same creative power that had inspired the pen of the Bab, and would guide him along a path that would ultimately lead the world to peace. And she said to him the following words. So Antimo, if you can put up the last slide there. She said to him, Grieve thou not for that which hath befallen thee, neither be thou afraid, for thou art in safety. Verily we shall render thee victorious by thyself and by thy pen. And so for today's song, I wanted to sing a prayer that was written by Bahá'u'lláh on the subject of attraction to beauty, which is a theme that will actually come up throughout the story as a very important theme in the story. And I think that I wanted to play this today because I think that this mystical vision that Bahá'u'lláh experienced down in the Black Pit was essentially, it was a vision of beauty. And so if you're fasting today, I hope you had a good fast. If you've already broken your fast, it's evening time here in Dublin each night when we do these live streams. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow for day 5 of A Story of Light. This song is called Beauty. Thy presence my drink, and thy pleasure my hope, and praise of thee my action, and remembrance of thee my companion, and the power of thy sovereignty my succorer, thy habitation my home, and my dwelling place, the seat thou hast sanctified from the limitations imposed upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee, upon them who are shut out as by a veil from thee.
Thou art verily the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful, the Almighty, the all-glorious, the most powerful,